it was absolutely the hardest job that I've ever had to do. Oddly enough, this was an opportunity that I originally said no to. Can I make you believe that I'm Indiana Jones? Can I make you believe that I'm sounding like Indiana Jones? Like I'm moving like Indiana Jones? I never walked around my house going, I wonder if I can do a Harrison Ford impersonation. I'm Troy Baker, and today we are going to react to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. We have to find the stones, Gina, or they will.
If you were to draw a line through these ancient sites around the globe, you'd get a perfectly aligned circle.
The Great Circle.
Exactly. A director that I'd never worked with before, Tom Keegan, who is an incredible director, especially in the video game space, reached out to me and said, hey, I like you for this role. And I said, okay, are they looking for Harrison Ford? And he said, yes, they are. And I said, great, I'm going to give you 2 names. You're going to call one of these 2 people and they're going to solve your problem. And he said, okay, I like you for this role. And so I finally relented and I said, tell you what, I'll put myself on tape for this. And if it's good, then feel free to send it on. But if it is not, then please do us both a favor and just keep it between you and I. I sent it to him. He said he's sending it on. And after months of callbacks and new meetings and new scenes and new auditions, I finally found myself on a Zoom call with the creative director, with Tom Keegan and Todd Howard from Bethesda. The way they kicked off the meeting was Todd looked at me and goes, I want you to know I did not want you in my game. And I laughed and I said, I understand. He said, but you should know that we did a blind taste test and you won every time. And at first I thought that was a compliment. And then I realized it was a challenge. That was where the bar was, is that we needed to win every time. And so that's what we went for. Every scene, every time. It's literally one of the situations where necessity is the mother of invention. I had to figure out, can I do this? Can I sound like this at all? And before too long, you just start realizing that there's a certain timbre that he has to his voice. And it's not so much about like, hey, can I sound like Harrison Ford? It's like, can I sound like Indiana Jones? Especially in 1981, like we need to follow Raiders.
A friend of yours?
A competitor. He was good. He was very, very good.
And so to be able to not just sound like Indiana Jones, but move like Indiana Jones, this is full performance capture. So it became necessary for me to inhabit that role as fully as I possibly could. And it was a long process. It was probably, no, not probably, it was absolutely the hardest job that I've ever had to do. It was a big challenge. And then probably about 6 weeks into shooting, to be honest with you, I bumped up against a wall where I was like, I don't know if I can do this, man. I think I'm in over my head. And I was getting frustrated and I was struggling. Tony did a good job of reminding me of what I was there to do. And it's not for me to make you believe that I am Indiana Jones, but my real job was, can I make you believe that you're Indiana Jones? That's the challenge. Because if you believe that you're Indiana Jones, that's why we made this game. One of the biggest challenges that we had was, this needs to feel like you're playing one of the movies. We want there to be all of the elements to what an Indiana Jones story is, which Harrison Ford put it wonderfully. He said there's always mystery, adventure, and heart. So those are those 3 things that we always wanted to point to in our story. But number 1, you have to feel like you are this adventurer that is wrapped up in this quest to find something mysterious, some lost relic. There's a race against time because there's some force of opposition that is going to get to that thing faster than you if you don't get there first. And then there's also just the sense that this has such a beautiful aesthetic. Like it needs to look like the movies. So we brought in Kyle Klutz, who is our DP, our director of photography, as a cinematographer to actually give us the same look that Douglas Slocum shot Raiders of the Lost Ark in. So we had 2 Aries with anamorphic lenses on set in the mocap volume that just as the mocap cameras were tracking our movement in those suits, they were also tracking the movement and the lens data from those cameras. So that when you see camera push in on Indy, that camera was literally pushing in on me on the day. And that's something that most games do not do but they absolutely should. One of my favorites was, and it's also a tip to my second favorite Indiana Jones movie, which is Last Crusade, when one of the guards like drops this phase and he goes, "Do you have any idea how old that was?" Do you have any idea how old that was? There's just something that I love about Indy where he scolds someone for not respecting something of antiquity. He's just someone who loves history. He's someone who believes that we should preserve the past. And in order to do that, you have to understand it. In order to understand it, you have to immerse yourself in it. I like to think that there's a lot that I have in common with Indy, at least now. But there's definitely this draw to things that are ancient, that are of a different culture and of a different time, that have a sense of mystery about them. I've always been drawn to that. And some of the places that we go to in this game are some of the places that I've either A, always wanted to visit, or B, love to visit. We spent a lot of time in Rome and the Vatican. We get to go to Giza, which I've never been to before, and it's something that I've always been fascinated by. It was just ancient Egyptian culture. The one thing I did not have in common with them was how to use a bullwhip. And then I called Doc Duhame, who's an amazing whip master, and learned how to crack a whip. But the thing that surprised me the most was how loud it is. It sounds like a gunshot. It is the most terrifying weapon that I think anybody could use. And the beauty of it is that it was never designed to be a weapon. It was something that improvised. And it was actually the prop master, if I remember correctly, it was the prop master on Raiders that came up with the idea of the bullwhip, because they wanted something that wasn't just a weapon. It was something that he used that was had more than just one purpose. It was this multi-purpose tool that he could use to escape from, near death, or he could intimidate, or he could grab things. And so one thing that I love about the bullwhip is that early on, even without even thinking about it, what a great mechanic to have in a game is something like a bullwhip, which you get to use in the game.
What were you doing out there?
Fresh air!
One of the games that we would play on set was, because our story really takes place within the first 3 movies, it became very important to establish everybody's kind of ranking of the first 3 movies. And so we'd walk up as like, what are you? And people go, oh, I'm 213, or I'm 231. I am 132. Todd Howard is 213. But for me, it is absolutely Raiders comes first. Last Crusade is a very, very tight second. And Temple of Doom is third, only because I wasn't allowed to see it when I was growing up as a kid. And so it actually might have been the last one that I saw. Yeah, it was the last one that I saw. With every game that I've ever played, there's always some new favorite that I get when I go back and play it again. For The Great Circle, I can tell you, the opening is my favorite. First of all, it was the first thing that we shot. It was the hardest thing I think I've ever done in my entire career. And it was just one of the most rewarding to actually play through it. It's one of the most creative things I think we've ever done, and to me it was chef's kiss. What surprised me most about our story when I first heard it back on that Zoom call with our creative director and Tom Keegan with Todd Howard, the thing that surprised me the most is like, how has this not already been made? Like, how has this in some way not become a movie or a graphic novel or a game? Because it was such a good story and it made so much sense. It was so Indiana Jones. But I found myself literally on the edge of my seat the entire time going, and then what happens? And then what happens? So I knew then from the very beginning that we had a great story on our hands. No, there's absolutely none. No, every Easter egg that's in there, I can't say this. Early on, I was asked, hey, Troy, are there any Easter eggs that you want to have in the game? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And they're like, great, what are they? And I said, well, I can't just think of them right now. Give me some time. And so on our next shoot block, we would shoot about every other month or every 2 months. I had an idea for one. I was like, hey, do you think that we can do this? Just as a little nod. My suggestion was that they put something in for Sir Francis Drake. And I say, yeah, I heard about some other guy that went after that. Just as a little nod to Uncharted. So one of the obvious questions, when we were making this game was, well, how is this going to compare to other games that have come out in this genre? You know, action adventure or adventure games have been out obviously for 40 years. So how is this going to be any different? We've seen what happens when camera spins around behind the right shoulder of our protagonist, and now we're looking and experiencing that from viewing it from behind. We take it one step further. It's like, we want to make you believe that you're Indiana Jones. We push in, and now you are viewing it as Indiana Jones. When you throw a punch, it's your fist that you see moving. It's you that cracks the whip. So actually bringing us into first person is something we've never really done before in this genre, especially in this genre. So that to me is automatically what makes it unique. Second of all, it's Indiana Jones. Like, there's already a world and there's characters that we've come to know now for 40 years that we get to have a whole new adventure with. Like, that's something that we've never done before. So this to me is something that from the jump is automatically just different and unique. I don't know how long they had been working on this when I joined, but I knew that November of 2020, I believe, is when everybody saw that teaser trailer, and you know, that slow pan across the table revealing all the artifacts. And shortly after that was when I got the call from Tom Keegan. So we shot on this for over 2 years, almost 2.5 years. I have no idea how long they've been working on before that, but I know that Todd Howard's been wanting to make this game ever since he was a kid. So a long time. One of my favorite behind the scenes moments that comes to mind right now is with Tony. Tony was tall, like 6'6", 6'7", I think, and I'm 6'4". So, but we needed to have more height between Indy and Locus. And so one of our first scenes, Locus gives Indy like a bunk on the head. Tony's hands were massive, and so even just kind of like jokingly doing that, I was like. He got me good on the noggin, and he even told me, he's like, I'm gonna put my hands on you. I'm like, okay. And just these massive hands just kind of come over, and he picks me up and just, you know, bonks me on the head. But to me, it was all of my favorite moments were just, you know, especially when we're off in Sweden shooting together. We're staying in the same hotel, we're going to the restaurants together, it's like going to camp. And so between Marios and Ale and Tony and our entire crew, like it was some of the best moments happened offset as well as on set. It was a good time. With every job, if I've done my job and I've done it right, I walk away and I've learned something. I've hopefully made myself better. I think about the 5-year-old kid that sat in that movie theater watching Raiders, way too young, watching people's faces melt. But also seeing for the first time that a superhero could use his brain even more than he used his fists or certainly a gun, and that I could be that. That was the first time where I was like, oh, it's possible to be that person that I'm seeing on screen. And I never thought that 5-year-old 40 years later would be stepping on to stage to play that character. And it's you hear these like glib cliches of the dream come true, but it literally is. I've been able to play some amazing roles and be able to work with creators to create new characters that hopefully leave as much as an indelible mark on the audience as Raiders or Indy left for me, but to be able to actually step into that role, this one will be hard to top for me. It's just, this is something that has been with me literally my entire life. So for me to be able to play this, I hope I made Harrison proud. And more importantly, I hope that what I contributed in some way gives the player the same feeling as I got. Sitting in that theater watching Raiders. If you can go, I can do that, then I will have done my job. The beauty of what I do is that I have a team of 200 people back at, you know, the studio that are helping me to look like Indiana Jones. I can't imagine in some ways being limited Now, physically, Dad, you got to look like him. Like, to just do that on camera, I love working in games. I love the mask that I get to hide behind digitally, and the support and the help that I get from incredible animators to be able to go, wasn't just right, but we can help with that. I love working in partnership and in tandem with other incredible artists to make that performance be as believable as possible. Thank you for staying with me as we reacted to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I'm Troy Baker. I get to play Indiana Jones, and you can catch me on socials at official Troy Baker, or if you want, you can check out one of these videos.